Hey there, folks. Hope you're doing well this week. A little bit late, but hot off the press is Resurrection number 3, I think, from me to you. Dear friends, do you ever think about our relationship to our location, to our place? Many of you are deeply connected to the land here. While the land is important to our lives, my sense is that we often don't think very much about it. We normally go about our lives, our jobs, our daily tasks, without too much thought about our relationship to the place, to this land, to our geography. The place and the land we live in is like the program running in the background of most of what we do. Thinking about this got into my mind earlier this week while I was on a quick run to clear my head. As I was looping back home, I passed Mark Emgarten. I almost didn't see him at first since he was about 3/4 of the way into the ground repairing something that needed it. I can't recall what he said the problem was, as usually my runs are times when I'm thinking about several other things. By the time I got home, it had escaped my mind. What struck me, however, was that Mark was literally standing in the earth. The reason he was standing in this hole in the ground was because it was part of his job. But I think there's more to it than that. One does not stand 4 feet in the ground to fix something unless one has some level of care for the ground one is standing in. Mark was there because it was his work, yes, but I suspect also because the ground he stood in, this place, it matters. He's not interested in just allowing whatever problem he was fixing to go on being a problem, uncared for. This place matters to him, and so he was at work on it. Mark's example is not an isolated incident. Several others around here are busy caring for the place. Toby Muller plants trees, Bill Nelson, Jim Zimmerlein, Bryson Brock Littler, Cash Emgarten, they all mow grass. These are just a few that come to mind, not to mention the many of you who are farming families, who work with the land, with hogs, with cattle. Yes, these are all sources of income. Some of these are ways of making our dwellings more hospitable. But deep beneath these tasks is something about our humanity. Each of us are planted in this place. God has put us here. And at the core of our humanity, we are made to be caretakers of our place. Standing in a hole in the ground is not what it appears. It and tasks like it are some of the more noble things we can be doing with our lives. Why do I think this? Because Scripture's story tells us this. This place-caring work is how the story of Genesis 2 is meant to come alive in our lives. I find it interesting that what most Christians get out of the creation stories is whether and how Genesis 1 fits with science. Genesis 2 is hardly ever talked about. We need to move past this and read these stories for how they're supposed to be read, to form our lives. It so happens that these stories tell us something about what our lives and what resurrection life is all about. Resurrection life, a way of living that's called to life by God to follow in the steps of Jesus, is a return to the beginning, or a recapitulation, as the ancient pastor and theologian Irenaeus put it. Return to the beginning through Jesus Christ. Every day we all wake up in a world we did not make. It was here long before us. It's a world of God's making. The first task of Genesis 2, the task of humanity, is to till the ground. We are made to look out for and to be attentive to the needs of the place God has put us. Fundamentally, this is what humanity exists for. That's if we're going to use Genesis and the story of creation as an indicator of what it means to be human. To live the resurrection life is to live with the outlook that every day we wake up new in the garden. That's where Jesus called Mary's name in the Gospel of John right after the resurrection. And remember, this is where everything begins for us too. Every day we awaken to the same God who planted us in his garden, in the place he has made for us. This means that our place, this place, matters. Standing in 4-foot holes, digging in the mud, planting trees, mowing lawns, it all matters. And farming, of course, farming. This land-caring work is God's work in us. Being attentive to our places is to live as if where we are planted is the garden every day. It's to see your work and the work God has given you as work in His garden. Is this Iowa? No. You're in the garden of God. One point of significance about this is that our lives of trust in God, of belief, are not simple and abstract. And it's way more involved than just simply admitting that you believe in Jesus. So often it seems in our culture, especially our popular Christian culture, that we like to gravitate toward the abstract, universal slogans and ideas about faith and God. These things make faith seem easy and applicable. But the honest truth is that life, faith, God, none of it is easy, universal, or simple and applicable. It involves all of our lives and attention to our places. Being attentive to place means there are things that need attention, and you might need to dig a hole in the mud to get to it. Sure, the life of faith could be a life of simple, universal slogans, if you want that. But that's just the commercialization of faith, a false advertisement of what's not real. The reality of Jesus Christ, the reality of God becoming human in time and place, doesn't work that way. The incarnation of Jesus means that the particularities of place and life in a particular place, all of these things matter. And life in one place is never the same one day to the next, nor is it the same from one place to the other. God's garden is large and dynamic, and every part of it has different needs. The life of faith changes every day with the needs of the place we're in. You can't predict it. You can't really plan it. You can only wake up to it, be attentive to it, and follow where God leads. Standing in a 4-foot hole in the ground matters to God, just as it matters to Mark. And the work Mark does matters to this place, God's place. So do the tasks of planting trees, mowing lawns, and farming. This goes back to one of the main things I want to keep reminding you of. God has not abandoned this world. God is, in fact, deeply invested in this world, and not in a general abstract way. God is invested in this earth, in this place, where you are, and what you do here. Now, this message, I suspect, doesn't exactly align with the ways of our culture. We in our culture have nearly made it an art to plan, to predict, to create efficient, scalable, and applicable steps to get us somewhere. We want to keep moving, and sometimes this is fine, but there is nothing quick, efficient, or scalable about the life of faith, especially the life of faith that is attentive to place. I suspect maybe this was part of the problem in the first garden. Adam and Eve took their eyes off the place and started setting their sights on bigger things. But when we dismiss the importance of place, we dismiss the main thing God has made us for, and we lose who we are. Jesus in the garden reminds us. Faith isn't abstract rules and theological truths. It's not about climbing the ladder. It's about being attentive to the Spirit of God coming alive in the smallest tasks of place. If I ever start preaching or teaching in a way that's full of abstractions and theologizing that doesn't land in your lives in this place, you have the green light to call me out. If I ever come across as making faith seem easy, some 5-step scalable project that Christians can master, it's your job to tell me to stop. The gospel, the good news of God for us, matters nothing if it does not find meaning in this place. If it cannot mean something in 4-foot deep holes in the ground, then it means nothing at all. In defiant hope, Pastor Kyle.